I used to love Valentine's Day. I used to love all the cutesy displays and Valentine's-themed stock items we put out in the Walmart I worked at. And I used to love picking out something special for my boyfriend after planning a little date night with him. But we're not together anymore, and I'm not much of a romantic these days either. In fact, I dread February 14th coming around each year because it reminds me of one of the single worst moments in my entire life. So like I said, I worked at Walmart when this all happened, and it actually happened in the store too. I loved the decorating and checking out the romantic stock that we'd gotten in that year, but I usually tried to get Valentine's Day off. Or if I was working it, I'd trade shifts with a coworker. But this one year, I can't get off, and no one would trade with me, so I was stuck working 8 till 5 on Valentine's Day. But it's no big loss. I can wait for my presents, and me and my boyfriend arranged to do something after work anyway, so I took it on the chin. Right after I finished my lunch break, I happened to be walking by one of the Valentine's displays when I see this older guy staring at some of the items. I thought it was the cutest thing ever. This sweet older gentleman looking to pick his wife up something romantic. Or maybe he had his eye on someone in the nursing home he was at. Either way, it was super adorable to me. So I saddled up to the old guy and asked him who the lucky lady is. He's all startled for a moment, again kinda super cute, and has to compose himself before he gives me his answer. There was no one special in his life. He was just something of an old romantic, and seeing cutesy displays like ours on Valentine's Day made him long for lost loves of his. I remember he said that. I then asked if he had his eye on anyone new, and he starts talking in a way I found kind of confusing at first. Like I thought I may have misunderstood, maybe lost the context a little, but after a minute of him just sort of babbling, I realize he's not making any sense at all. He keeps skipping from thought to thought, just like a stream of broken consciousness coming out of him. It was right about then that it hit me that he wasn't all there. That was also about the time that I realized he wasn't that old either. I mean, all his hair was gray. He had like an old man jumper on, but he was so animated when he talked. He seemed sort of spry, like full of nervous energy, and at a push, I'd say he was in his mid-50s. But something about him just seemed off, and I was starting to think that initiating conversation hadn't been the best idea on my part. I wish him luck with who the lucky lady turns out to be, then slowly make a move to walk away. But he stops me, not with a word. I mean, he physically stops me from walking away. He didn't grab me or anything at first. It was just his fingers gently half wrapping around my wrist, but it was enough to really put me on edge. Then he asked me in a way that seemed both extremely childlike and extremely sinister, both at the same time. "Will you be my Valentine?" It was so surreal that initially I thought he had to be joking. Like no sane person would ask anyone that in a serious way, not like that anyway. So I just sort of laughed it off before apologizing and letting him know that I was seeing someone, and right as I do, I try to pull my wrist out of his hand. He tightens it, wraps his entire fist around my wrist, and squeezes. I just froze for a moment. In almost 2 years of working at that Walmart, I've never had so much as an issue with a customer. Maybe it's because I'm short and blonde, maybe it's because I'm just lucky. And because that whole interaction went from 0 to 100 so fast, and given my total lack of experience in any kind of conflict management, I just had no idea what to do. So I froze. The guy starts turning red in the face, and he continues to squeeze my wrist as hard as he could. There are veins bulging out of his neck. He's trembling so hard his eyes are starting to water, and he is strong, like really freaking strong. Then what he did next haunted me for months afterwards. He gets his face right in mine, while I'm absolutely frozen in terror, and starts singing. He tried to keep his voice down, but he couldn't get the words out without his words trembling from whatever weird rage fit he was going through. After 2 lines, I just start screeching for help, but as soon as I start making any noise, one of his hands shoots up around my throat and pushes me back hard against a shelf. and when he starts squeezing, I stop being able to scream. Then, one of his other hands goes somewhere else, somewhere I really wish he hadn't put it. But when he did, I finally found the strength to really fight back. But it was over moments later. Some other customer had come barreling down the aisle when he'd heard my scream and tackled the guy so hard that he almost floored me too. And if the guy seemed crazy before he got tackled, afterward he turned into a full-blown lunatic. He actually bit the guy who first got him down, and if it wasn't for security showing up as quick as they did, I think he might have actually gotten free. He was legitimately frothing at the mouth by the time the cops showed up. I've never seen a person look like that before. That guy was more animal than man by that point. And the fallout was huge. Walmart sent me to some trauma management thing that didn't help at all and sent emails around to the other associates promising they'd do better with security and stuff, but it was all just for show. I gave statements to the police too, and for a while, it looked like I'd have to go to court to testify against the guy that assaulted me. But as it turned out, he was found unfit to stand trial, and instead of going to real prison, he ended up in some state hospital somewhere else. When it was all said and done, I just tried to get over it. It was one of the more horrific moments of my life, sure, but I refused to let it define me. And for a long while, I worked on my overall mental health and particularly my sense of self-esteem. I thought I was good after that. I thought I was fixed. So there was no way of me anticipating what would happen when I met a friend at this 50s diner that was our favorite place to eat. We're just sitting there, conversation on hold while we eat, and this song comes on the old jukebox. Until the lyrics started, everything was fine, but then these two girls started singing some words that I thought I'd gotten out of my head completely. I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me. I recognized it instantly from the weird little changes in pitch in the girls' voices, but it was the exact same song the guy in Walmart had sang before he grabbed me. I know I caused a bit of a scene when I got up and fast walked out of there, with my friend calling after me, but I honestly didn't care. I couldn't breathe while that song was in my ears. I just couldn't be there. I suppose trauma is weird like that. No matter how much you think you have it under control, it's still there, bubbling away just beneath the surface. But I do work at it, and I managed to neutralize how that creepy old song made me feel too. I mean, it took a while, but I managed it. Like I said, I'm not going to let what happened define me, and I'll wear my wounds with pride. But Valentine's Day is most definitely ruined for me. Back when I was in my early 20s, I met a girl who set my entire world on fire. She was smart, beautiful, and had passion for art. We're gonna burn together, she'd say. Not in the literal sense, of course. It's just that romance that we got swept up in was without a doubt the most intense thing I'd ever been involved in with my entire life. It was like a wildfire just burning out of control. Nothing had topped it before, and nothing has topped it since. But let's just say that neither of us were in a particularly good place in our lives, and as passionate as the relationship was, it wasn't exactly healthy for the most part. She was very, very possessive, and I'm not going to lie, I thought that was kinda hot at first. But that got really old, really fast, and her behavior started to cause arguments between us. She would explode at the mention of any other girl. I once mentioned something to do with my sister, and she immediately interrupted to accuse me of being unfaithful. Even after I explained the girl I was talking about was my sister, she stayed mad. It just defied all logic, but I was in love, so I stayed with her. So we're together for 17.5 months, and that time included some of the best and worst moments of my life so far. But in the end, the bad started to outweigh the good, and faced with another Valentine's Day with her, I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I made the decision to break up with her, and as you might imagine, she did not take it very well at all. At first, she was in complete denial, saying that there was nothing wrong with our relationship and that she had no idea why I was trying to break up. Then she got angry, like really angry, started throwing around accusations and threats, none of which I thought that she was capable of acting on. Then came the tears and the final acceptance, by far the hardest part for me. She was crazy, but I didn't think she was a bad person, and it sucked to have to hurt her like that. She insisted on staying in touch, maybe staying friends or something, but I had to go no contact. It was the only way we'd really get over each other. I felt like a monster, but I did it anyway. About a month goes by and I'm sitting in my apartment, alone on Valentine's Day. I'm sort of over this girl, but I'm also sort of not, and with it being Valentine's Day, I'm thinking about her a whole lot. So when my phone buzzes and I see it's a text from her, I'm like rushing to see what it says. I deleted her number, but you know when you just always remember the last 4 digits of someone's number? Yeah, that. So all this message says is, we were supposed to burn together. And that just kind of broke my heart right there. I thought about calling her, maybe try and patch things up, and in retrospect, maybe that's exactly what I should have done. But in the moment, I just tried to stay strong and stick to the no contact rule. I tried to take my mind off stuff, stayed away from all the romantic movies and Valentine's episodes that the TV networks were trying to force down my throat. But still, I just couldn't shake the lonely feeling I had in me. So later that night, I'm kind of intoxicated, just sitting on the couch when my phone buzzes again. I just know it's her, like knew it in my gut, and surprise, surprise, it was. I debated just quickly clearing the notification and ignoring the message, but my curiosity got the better of me and I found myself reading it. I knew the first line said, we were supposed to burn together, again from the notification, but only when I opened up the whole thread did I see that underneath the first part, it just said, but now you're going to burn alone. Again, it hit me right in the feels. It was incredibly clingy, I know, but at the same time, you can't even deny how poetic that is. Poetry, that's all I thought it was. Just that old metaphor we used to share. I didn't think that she'd take it as far as she did. I didn't think she meant literally burn. Because sometime after that, I'm on my couch and I just started smelling smoke. I go through the stages of thinking I've drunkenly forgotten that I'm cooking, then thinking the neighbors are burning food on accident, then thinking someone is making a campfire outside or something. Just pure denialism, really, not wanting to believe that the apartment building was actually on fire. Then the fire alarm starts going off. I rush downstairs in no shoes or socks, just a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and run out the back of the building to the fire escape point. And on the way, I see smoke billowing out from under the door of the apartment below me. Minutes later, a fire truck is parked outside of the apartment building, spraying water into the apartment below me, which had been absolutely scorched. It was one of the more surreal experiences of my life. These firemen are asking me if I'm okay, if I needed one of those foil blankets. It was February and it was freezing outside. But all that could come out of my mouth is like, I know who did this. I know who did this. One of them tells me to get in touch with the police if the cause of the fire was criminal, so I immediately do because, like I said, I had a good idea of who set that fire in the first place. I wasn't quite sure how'd she done it, but having my ex-girlfriend text me you're going to burn alone, and then all of a sudden there's a house fire? That was a no coincidence to me. No coincidence at all. And over the next couple of weeks, I had to go and stay in my mom's place while some renovation work was undertaken at my smoke-damaged apartment. But I did get in touch with the police, who thanked me for the tip and said that they'd get in touch with me if the cause of the fire was found to be arson. Only it wasn't. They called a little while later to say that a fire department investigator had determined that some faulty wiring was to blame for the blaze, and so they wouldn't need any testimony from me. I brought up the text messages my ex had sent me, how her words seemed to precede the fire in a way that was just too apt to be coincidence. But again, they insisted that no arson was to blame. I even called her and texted her saying that I knew what she had done, that she wouldn't get away with it. But as you can imagine, she played dumb, saying things like, "I don't know what you're talking about. You shouldn't be contacting me." It's something that messes with me to this day, and there are so many unanswered questions that frankly, I'm not sure I want to know the answers to. I just know that one moment she's texting me, telling me I'm going to burn, and the next, my apartment building's on fire. I'm not saying my ex broke into the apartment downstairs and did something to the wiring, but it's even crazier of me to suggest that she willed something like that to happen, or engineered it or something. I know how paranoid that sounds, so I tend not to put that theory out much, but it had such a profound effect on my mind that I still moved apartments not long after, just to be safe. Because to me, there's still something very frightening about that time in my life, something I can't quite explain. And now when I remember that old, we're going to burn together, it doesn't set me alight anymore. All it does is make my blood run cold. Beginning on November 22nd, 1986, the life of Oscar Pistorius was unusual from the get-go. He was born missing the outsides of both feet and was also missing his fibula. The fibula are lower leg bones that extend from the knee to the outside of the ankle, parallel to the shin bone, its job being to stabilize the ankle and support the lower leg muscles. Given that he was without such support, his feet were essentially useless. So at just 11 months old, doctors made the decision to remove Oscar's lower legs entirely. At that point, if you'd have speculated that the young amputee might grow up to be a professional runner, people might have called you crazy. But in fact, that's exactly what Oscar became, thanks to a piece of cutting-edge Paralympian technology that came to be known as running blades. Manufactured using carbon fiber reinforced polymer material, the curved design of these blades is intended to store kinetic energy like a spring, allowing the wearer to jump and run effectively. The blades were so effective that at the 2011 World Championships in Athletics, Oscar was the first amputee to win a non-disabled world track medal. And at the 2012 Summer Olympic Games, despite not winning anything, Pistorius was the first double-leg amputee participant, a titanic achievement, we can all agree. Naturally, these victories and appearances made Oscar an international sensation, and he received an incredible amount of fame, wealth, and attention. As a result, Oscar met South African model and paralegal Riva Steenkamp at a party in November of 2012. The pair hit it off and soon began dating pretty seriously. As for a while, it seems that Riva was phenomenally smitten with Oscar. Many of her more superficial friends would wonder aloud what Riva saw in him, but those close to her knew what it was. When Riva was in her early 20s, she had broken her back in a horse riding accident and was forced to essentially learn to walk all over again. It was one of the most debilitating and humbling experiences of her entire life, and she never forgot how much strength and willpower it took to conquer her temporary disability. She saw that same kind of fortitude in Oscar, and it made her love him for it. The pair spent Christmas of 2012 together, and after a few months more of steady dating, decided to spend Valentine's Day of 2013 together too. It was the perfect date to mark the blossoming of their new relationship, and both parties must have been feverishly excited at the prospect of such a romantic occasion. But what they didn't know was that an evening that would begin with love and affection would end in a nightmare of terror and violence that would set the world's media aflame. According to Oscar, his Valentine's date with Riva went marvelously well. The pair shared a romantic meal, watched a movie, and then after a little too much wine, spent some time in bed together before falling asleep. Then, in the early hours of the following morning, Oscar awoke to hear a noise coming from the ensuite bathroom, one that sounded an awful lot like the window sliding open. Oscar continued to lie there, listening in the darkness, and in the moments that followed, he swore he'd heard someone actually trying to climb in through the bathroom window. Moving as quietly as possible, he slid off of his bed to retrieve a loaded pistol that he had hidden nearby, and arguably, Oscar might be right to be so vigilant. Despite having a population 6 times smaller than the United States, South Africa has 23% more violent crime, and the wealthy Pretoria neighborhood that Oscar called home had been previously targeted by violent home invaders. Approaching the bathroom door with his pistol locked and loaded, Oscar was terrified. His new girlfriend was lying in bed just feet away, and there was potentially a violent home invasion about to occur, and he hadn't had time to put his prosthetic legs on. He was walking on his stumps. Later, Oscar would say this made him feel utterly defenseless. He then heard a noise that, to him, sounded like whoever was on the other side of the bathroom was about to rush into the bedroom to do God knows what with them. He panicked and fired 4 shots through the bathroom door. The first thing Oscar did was turn back towards his bed, where he had expected Riva to be scared out of her wits, having been woken up by the gunshots. But there was no Riva, only an empty bed. It was then that Oscar realized who was behind the door. It wasn't some violent home invader. It was his girlfriend, Riva. He tried to open the bathroom door, but it was locked from the inside. Oscar then grabbed a cricket bat and began to smash down the door and succeeded in creating a large hole through which he was able to crawl. He then unlocked the door, grabbed the unconscious Riva, then actually carried her downstairs in preparation for the ambulance he had called. Riva was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead after attempts to revive her failed. For Oscar, it was a living nightmare. It seemed that he tried to defend the girl he loved, but in doing so, had ended up killing her instead. At his trial, Oscar seemed genuinely remorseful, admitting that he had shot Riva by accident and how doing so had destroyed his life completely. It was mostly established by witness testimony that Oscar and Riva had a very healthy relationship and were very much in love. Valentines cards were presented as evidence, affectionate WhatsApp exchanges that were brought before the court as proof that there was nothing overly sinister about Riva's death, that it was nothing more than a tragic accident. But other evidence was submitted too, evidence that suggested that there was trouble in paradise. In one particular text message, sent less than 3 weeks before her death, Riva told Oscar that she was scared of him sometimes. She said that whenever Oscar snapped, that she was terrified, and went on to describe his behavior as nasty. Riva's mother, June Steenkamp, also had doubts that her daughter's death was merely a tragic accident. She told a courtroom that she didn't believe Oscar's story at all, that none of his actions suggested that he felt protective of her. She believed that Riva and Oscar had a horrible fight or argument that evening, and that she'd fled to the bathroom because she was scared and had naturally locked the door behind her. I think he may have shot once, and then he had to go on and kill her because she would have been able to tell the world what really happened, what he's really like. She later told journalists, asserting that there was no doubt in her mind that Oscar had killed her daughter because she had wanted to break up. I believe their relationship was coming to an end, she said. In her heart of hearts, she didn't think it was making either of them happy. As the trial concluded, Oscar Pistorius was convicted of manslaughter, having escaped the murder charge that state prosecutors were hoping for. The conviction came with a prison sentence of just 5 years, but a combination of cooperating with law enforcement and good behavior in prison meant that Oscar was just released just 10 months into his sentence. He was still under house arrest and had community service to complete, but the fact remains that someone was able to take a life and see the inside of a jail cell for just 10 months. Even in light of the accidental nature of Riva's death, just 10 months seemed like an alarmingly light sentence. But over the course of years, successive appeals and mounting evidence all pointed towards the likelihood that Oscar's version of events was just pure spin, and that somehow he had actually known it was Riva in the bathroom that night before he opened fire. This assertion, that Oscar Pistorius had deliberately murdered his girlfriend, gained so much traction that by 2017, Oscar's sentence was upgraded to murder, and he was sent back to prison for an additional 13 years. It was a strange and drawn-out process, made even more bizarre by the fact that South African courts don't have juries, so any and all evidence was reviewed solely by a handful of prosecutors and judges before any fresh sentence was handed out. What exactly this new evidence showed isn't available to the public just yet, but whatever it did or did not prove, it led to a South African judge to throw the full weight of the judicial system behind one of their country's biggest sports stars. Whatever that evidence was, it must have been pretty damning indeed. And if the death of Riva Steenkamp wasn't simply some tragic accident, then the implications are horrifying. A young model went over to her sports star boyfriend's home, not for any Valentine's Day romance, but to break up with him. This person was so enraged by the rejection that she was forced to lock herself in his bathroom. He tried to smash the door down with a cricket bat, and when he realized she might use her cell phone to call for help, he fired 4 shots through the wood of the door, one of which struck her in the skull. On a day of the year when couples everywhere should be getting together, romancing each other and enjoying their companionship, Valentine's Day of 2013 became one of terror, pain, and death for young Riva Steenkamp, who died scared and alone in the bathroom of a man she barely knew. Every year, without fail, I get a Valentine's Day card. Now, I might be mistaken, but most people reading this are thinking, "Oh, lucky you," or "Why is that something to complain about?" And 9 times out of 10, you might be right. But the thing is, I have no idea who sends them, and have actually spent a great deal of time trying to figure out who. It wasn't something that was creepy when it started off. In fact, getting a card from a secret admirer was a pretty awesome feeling. The first card came when I was 13 years old, right about the time I needed a little confidence boost. But then when they started arriving year in and year out, I got to thinking it was just my mom sending them or something. I confronted her about it on Valentine's Day when I was 16, and she insisted it wasn't her. I mean, really insisted, saying she'd tell me if she actually knew who it was. I ended up asking all my close family and friends, but none of them admitted to sending me an anonymous card. So, cut to me being in college, it's coming up to Valentine's Day, and I realized that for the first time in a long time, I might not actually get a card that year. Only I did. Same style, same handwriting, same mystery person that must have sent it. But here's the thing. I had literally just moved dorms like a week prior because of a burst water pipe in my original dorm room. But the Valentine's card is addressed to the new dorm room, which was on the opposite side of campus. Literally the only person in the world who had my new address was my mom, so cue the second confrontation about the Valentine's card in like 2.5 years. One that again ends with her violently assuring me that she hadn't given my address to anyone. So, the question remained, who was sending me those cards? It really creeped me out for a while, but it was something that I grew to live with again. I mean, it seems like such a non-problem, right? I keep getting Valentine's Day cards. People would always just laugh. I'm 33 years old in May of this year. I've moved apartments 3 times in the past 6 years. After my mom died, it got to the point where I'd moved and not a single member of my family knew my address until I told them. So the second time I ran a little experiment. I didn't tell a single person that I'd moved, only my new landlord. The utility companies and me knew I was living in this new place. I waited 2 months like that, having to pick up mail at the old apartment, keeping my address secret until one particular day rolled around, February 14th. Not a single other person knew my address, and I still found a Valentine's card in my mailbox.